Good afternoon, friends, family, loved ones, enemies, contributors, distractors. This is Kevin Lewis on the Blueprint. And this week's show is called A Creedless Breed. And now, when I'm talking about a creedless breed, when I'm saying a creed is instilled ways of beliefs or your faith, a doctrine. That's your principles that's passed down to a generation. That's what a creed is. These are your core values, your beliefs and whatnot that makes up who you are as a people or as a culture. A breed is a variety or a species, a particular group, a variety within a group of a species, like a new generation. And we always hear people say in the African American culture, we always say we are not our grandparents' generation. This is a new generation. And what you're saying is this generation is a new breed of black people, if you will, or African Americans, if you will. Because that's what we're actually talking about. We're not talking about a new generation of Africans. We're not talking about a new generation when we're talking about people in Jamaica or anything like that. We're talking about here with us. We're a new breed. We're different. We're not our grandparents' generation. We react differently. If it's as if it's something within us that's differently, that's built different. We're a new breed. And when I'm talking about a creedless breed, I'm talking about a generation that's losing a creed within themselves, and the values and the structures and the beliefs and the doctrines and everything that should be instilled within a people, that may have been within a people, that are starting to be lost. And at what point, at some point, we're becoming creedless at all. We are not getting anything from the four generations, those values and those beliefs. Even and when I'm saying faith, I'm talking about having faith within yourself and your people, faith within your elders. And I'm not just talking about religious faith, beliefs, the beliefs within yourself, not just belief within yourself, but beliefs within your elders in the generations that passed, and you believe what they were doing, you understand what they were doing, you have these core um, um, principles and whatnot that you stand by and you stand on, and you're going to pass those things on. And these new generations, what I feel is the youth seems to be losing a lot of those doctrines, those principles, and those core values as the generations keep coming. They're losing something. They're losing something new. They're losing nuances, and they're losing blatant things that we need. They're blatantly losing or missing out on some of the values. And I believe a lot of our issues, the self-inflicted issues, have come about because of this. If you look at some of the things that, and I'm only talking about the self-inflicted issues that we have and the problems that we have within our community, some of those things have come about because we have lost our ethics and our morals within our people and our culture. This new breed, every generation is a new breed. And I think that's purposely done. Or if I ask the question, why is it like that? I'm going to submit to you reasons that I believe it's like that. But these morals and this creed that we're losing is why teen pregnancy seems to be constantly rising, new generation after new generation, because we're losing the ethics and the core values of our young women and our young men. Because if I talk about black on black crimes that seem to be permeating throughout our neighborhoods and our communities, because we have, and I'm talking about the hatred crimes, the ones where we are conflicting damage on each other for basically no reason. I'm not talking about with these people, hey, I'm robbing a store and it just happened to be a black store, and that's a black on black crime. But I'm talking about the fact that we go out our way to have these skirmishes with each other. Little or nothing can ignite a deadly situation between our men or fights between our women that wouldn't go on between other races. If we were getting into these issues with other races, we seem to be more lenient with outsiders than we are with each other. And this is like a violence and a hate against ourselves, like against our kind. And this seems to constantly grow as generations go on. This is something that's not dissipating as generations go on. We're not finding more love between each other. We're finding more distance between each other and distance between the parenting generation and the generation before that. We seem to be more breeding a generation that is getting further and further away from who we are, or even the knowledge of what we are or who we are and what we've done. And this is what I'm talking about. It's becoming a creedless breed. It's a lack of respect. If we constantly talk about a lack of respect for each other, you know, a lack of respect for our elders, a lack of support for each other. We're getting further and further away from wanting to go out and shop black owned or look for black owned businesses. And this seems to be a generational thing. This is a new breed, and it's a constant breed, a new generational breed that's happening. Last generation got further away. The generation before that seemed to have gotten further away. In the 70s, they got away from the Black Power movement. They got away from the whole civil rights type mentality. The generation after that in the 80s, you know, the music was positive for a moment, but then it just became all out negative. And we have a lot of this older generation versus new generation conflicts. And it's not maybe a physical conflict, but I'm talking about the mentality of, well, that music or this, you know, look, you're getting more outrageous and things like this. These kind of conversations I've witnessed throughout my lifetime has been happening. And it seems to get more and more egregious. And the reason, if I say the distance that the new generation seems to have to the parenting generation or older generations, it seems to be not wishing to build upon anything that the older generation has put out. They want to distance themselves, period. They don't want to do the old ways. They don't want to build upon the older ways. They want to eradicate it and do their own thing. The olden days and the olden ways seems to be more like a bad word. You know, doing what your parents did, doing what your grandparents did. And I can understand some of the things you could say, well, they did this, but I'm doing something better. If you're building upon something and making it better, you know, technology is different, times are different, but you should build upon it as opposed to eradicating it and trying to do something totally different and going in a total different direction. And to me, that's not learning or realizing or wanting to look at what the older generation has accomplished. I think the younger generation, this is just my opinion, I think younger generations tend to look negatively on past generations. And maybe because they're not proud of the older generations. They look at, and they're not even proud of themselves. I'll say that. They seem to not even be proud of who they are. This is why we have more violence against each other and no support with each other. The complaints that we have about, well, blacks don't support, or if we do this, we crabs in a barrel type mentality, you know, or those cliche sayings like that. You know how black people, they're not going to support. Black people don't support black. Black people don't do this, or black people do this, or whatever negative thing that they can promote, they will. We are quick to say this about black people, but we don't talk about the positivities or the positive things that we have and that we do. And speaking about us in a positive nature seems to be something that's drifting away. We're hashing and rehashing the negative more than we are bringing about or talking about the positive. We're more likely to gossip about the negative. And we give reasons of why we don't support this or support that if black people are involved. But I think the generations, we're not proud of our history. And I'm talking about a history of how we are and who we were, the predicament that our people were in, the subordinate predicament, you know, the status, subordinate status that we're in, begging for rights, as many people may look at it, you know, constantly marching and getting punched in the face. And this is why we're not my grandmother's generation. We're not really, because they were doing things together. They were out there trying to solidify a future for our people. We are not that generations, and we haven't been that. My generation wasn't that. We wasn't out there looking at things as they were happening to us and saying we need to do something about it. Looking back on history and looking at some of the documentaries and reading some of the books, some of these people that were younger started the Black Panther Party. Some of these, Stokely Carmichael, you know, he was college age when he was getting into the movement and marching and trying to correct things. And Angela Davis and Asada and all these people, they were younger people. They wasn't the older generation trying to help the younger generation. They were the younger generations getting out there, getting together and forming groups to make things happen. We are less likely to see that with groups in the 80s. Less likely to see that with groups in the 90s. Less likely to see that in the 2000s, and now even today we're less likely to see any young people getting together to form some type of organization for the betterment of our people. We're getting more distance from that type of mentality for our younger people. The younger people are drifting so far away that they're doing almost a 180. They're willing and wanting to associate with outsiders of our community. And I believe it's because they look at us in a negative, or generations in the past in a negative way. They rather claim things are different now. They would just make that proclamation. And proclamation with absence of any lessons, historical lessons, that history has taught us. If you just any proclamation, you're just saying, well, things are different now. You're saying America is different now. That's how it used to be. You know, that kind of proclamation with an absent historical backing of it, or anything that has happened that made it different, is ignorance. You can't just wish something or want something to be and just say, well, things are different. What made things different? How are things different? Show me and tell me how things are different. If you're talking to those people that are claiming that. And if you talk about the history and understanding more about crocodiles, I'm going to say this, understanding more about crocodiles doesn't change the nature of a crocodile, because we're able to study them more, because we're able to get more into their habitat, and we got more information about them. That doesn't change the nature of the crocodile or the history of the crocodiles. Now we want to behave, we want to befriend the crocodile and believe that they're our friends now and that they mean us no harm. Then we wonder why our children come up missing when they out playing with crocodiles, or they don't return home from trips when they out playing with crocodiles. Because the crocs, they don't respect your authority. They don't respect your kindness. They don't respect your status, the status of your parents or where you live. They don't respect your money. They don't respect your education. They don't care about you trying to befriend them. Crocs will always do what crocs have always done. And this is the analogy that I'm bringing to this new generation and a lot of things that's happening as of recent. And it's our responsibility to teach our kids to be cautious around crocs. in these croc infested waters that we are in, that we have been since we've been in this country. The croc's nature has not changed. But we have new generations that are not respecting the history of the crocs in America. They're not respecting the history that our ancestors have been through in this country. The fights that we have fought in this country. They may look at us in a negative way of we were begging for rights, we're fighting for civil rights and wanting to sit in restaurants. As you sit in restaurants with your crocodilian friends that you think that you know the nature of, and that your proclamation that things are different, turning a blind eye to every fight that we've had in this country, and not understanding the perils of the danger that you are in. Now, I want to thank some of y'all that showed up. I appreciate Ellen for showing up, and Lede Bishop for showing up. Coretta, I appreciate you showing up. Sakina, walaikum salam, sister, with the greetings. Aisha, I appreciate you showing up. Teresa Lewis, I appreciate you showing up. She said they are not being taught their history, so they don't realize what they have to be proud of. And also with that, they don't understand what they need to be cautious of. Because your history, our history will tell you that you have to be cautious being a black person in this country. No matter how far you think we have come. And you should be proud of the fight that we have fought. And you can look at any generation and look at their downfalls after the fact. But if you're in the midst of that fight, you could say they should have went right when they went left instead of going left. But at that time, they had to make a choice and a decision. And they are making choices and decisions. And the decisions and choices that we are allowing our kids to make are putting them in peril. And it is some of the parenting generation that is allowing our kids that have ignored our history in thinking that things have changed. And so they're allowing them to run out into the streets, to run out in the creeks where the crocs are at. Now we sit up, as many of us do, we sit up and we shake our heads at these people that's going out and getting attacked on video by bison. You know, every year they're getting attacked. What's wrong with these people? They out here around these wild animals, these people that want to feed the bears, you know, pet bears or whatever, and getting mauled, getting attacked by nature. They want to be out here befriending nature, petting nature, feeding nature. And nature will be what nature is. And nature has always been what nature was and will do what nature does. And we constantly see that, but we laugh at that. And then we watch our kids and allow our kids to defy the nature of this country and the history of this country. Just as the bison will do what the bison will do, the nature of America will do what the nature of America has been doing to us. And I don't care how our kids think or why our kids think things are different. And why are we allowing them to do what they do? And I'm talking about our kids. And I'm talking about America's kids, their kids. Some of the time we are allowing them to do these things to us because we are befriending them as if there's not a history. This is the paradox that I think that we are in as a parenting generation. And as the generation coming up, I'm in the grandparenting generation now, the parenting generation, because they believe, many of them believe, that things are not the same. I had a friend of mine. He very intelligent brother. He was on a panel, and he had a panel of younger people. And this was like a couple of years ago, and I know he posted about this younger generation and getting younger people involved in the black movements in our communities and things like this, which I am all for that. I think that's a necessity because maybe they can understand the history and the things that have been done when they look at some of our leaders in the past and what they actually have done instead of the miseducation that they're getting about our ancestors. But a lot of these kids that he was saying in his panel, he said it was interesting because a lot of them considered racism a thing of a past. These are young people, young black people on this planet that they consider educated. He said they consider that like old people, the olden days, that things that we complain about, that has been basically older people still complain about, that's not around anymore. And I thought that to be interesting. They thought that their problems was more about money than it was about color or race or anything like that, which I thought was interesting. And I thought it was more so interesting that my friend basically was saying, is this true? You know, listening to young people, and I thought that they were misguided then. They needed a reality check, and sometimes they would get that reality check learning the hard way, not to play with fire. Like you tell your kid, don't do this, don't do that, and then they get burned, and that's how they learn. And unfortunately, that is how I think that panel or these young people, they wasn't a group of siblings or anything. They just a bunch of different young people. And if that's how a lot of our young people are thinking, then they are misguided. And my thing is, how and why are we producing a new breed that's misguided? We should be producing a breed that's more cautious, that realize what they're dealing with and what they have to deal with, and what they will have to deal with, what their kids will have to deal with. I don't believe America is going to change. I think that she's going to change how she does what she does, but it's still going to be the same results. It's just going to be camouflaged or fixed in a different way, presented in a different way. And we have to be cautious of that. And it is still our responsibility as parents to do something to prolong our people, to do something to benefit the next generations coming up, the grandchildren, and prepare them for the perils that they may face, even though they may change. I remember hearing Asada Shakur before she passed, and they was interviewing her while she was in Cuba, and they asked her about the COINTELPRO program, and they asked her that did she believe that was over with, and she said no, it's that particular program is over with, but it has mutated into something different. It's something more powerful, something that's camouflaged, that's harder. She said at that time we didn't detect that, we didn't see that, we didn't know that it was happening until after the damage was done, to after the files were open. But in real time, we as a people didn't know that this was happening. We were believing the news. We were believing that these Black Panther Party groups in Chicago with Fred Hampton, that they fired on the police, and the police was telling us that. We didn't know the FBI was backing them and what actually happened until decades later after the damage was done. And she believed that program, those type of programs still exist, but just exist in a different form with the same purpose. And I found that interesting to hear them talk about the past and also the present, which I don't think that many of us are looking, because we should be learning from the history and those involved in the history, the federal government, the local police working together with us as targets in many different ways, not just crippling our organization, but crippling our communities in the ways that they went about accomplishing these things. So we should have a stronger breed that's more able to recognize or prepare to fight whomever gets in our way. But it seems that we are going in a different direction, because we are losing a lot of our principles and our ethics and our cores. A lot of these groups, they were trying to reinstill those things, stop us from losing the things that they felt at that time we were losing. And we are way worse now as a generation coming up. And the problems that we are having are multiplied. And it is imperative that some of us get together somehow, some way, and form some type of action, or try to entice our young people to want to solve some of these issues that are plaguing our neighborhoods. Like I said, we have, the teen pregnancy thing, and I'm talking about the single parent household issues. That's not something that may be something that they want to happen, but how are they making that happen with us? How are they enticing us to not want to have a husband and a wife in a nuclear family with kids and doing the best for them kids, no matter what? How are they enticing us to want to hurt each other over little or nothing? Looking at the news, just local news, just person, road rage, killing. You riding with your kids and you opening fire and you killing somebody else. While your kids are in the car and you taking your kids home. I mean, all these type of stories are happening daily. What should be happening in the road, on the road, in the streets, that you want to kill somebody that's not directly doing anything to you except not driving the way that you want or whatever? Or that we should react in that way, that we have no grace for each other, that you have no grace for the woman that bears your children. These type of things that's happening on a national level. I believe I had a show on the John Camp show, and we were talking about all of these murders that black men are perpetrating against their wives or their ex-wives or their ex-girlfriends or whatever, their kid's mother. And sometimes, murder, suicides or whatever, they're seeing that the black woman was the main victim, the highest rated victim in all these situations. That's disturbing. But what is someone else doing to make us be like this with each other? And I know we probably got some things where, they're teaching us to hate each other. But we have some defense mechanism out there. If we learn about our history, in this country, it seems like if we were teaching these things, or there was a hunger for the knowledge of these things that has happened to us, then we will understand that these are the things that we can't allow to be happening to us anymore. And we will be having programs, organizations, teaching ways to oppose these type of things from happening. Some of the single parent household products are some of the highest or the most vulnerable people that we have in our communities, the ones that create a majority of the crimes, whether it's teen pregnancies, whether it's gangs, the juvenile centers. The FBI statistics show that most of the people that's in prison, or most of our juveniles that's in these detention centers, they are products of a single parent household. So we have to solve that. If we know this information is there, we have to do something to rectify our relationship issues with each other. Why are we so quick to get out of a relationship? Now, if you've been decades with someone and you know what, this is not happening after the kids are grown and maybe this is a time, then that's fine, because that's not creating a single parent household, because you're not trying to develop your kids. But I'm talking about you in the core of your relationship. Your kids are young and you're easily enticed to just go your separate ways. What is causing these type of issues? Why are we so quick to break things up and break things away, or tear things apart, or do the things that will tear things apart? Because I'm not just talking about, we don't get along. I'm talking about there are things that will cause people to want to go their separate ways. But why are we allowing things to tear our family and our households apart, and think that our kids are not going to be suffering because of this? And it is our responsibility. We have to teach our kids. It's still our responsibility. We have to deal with the problems that this country is putting, the obstacles that this country is putting before us. The problem of being black in this country. Our kids we're going to deal with that. We're going to deal with police stops and, the violence in our communities, and you could raise your kid a certain way. I understand that, but then we got generations of kids that's thinking that there's nothing, that boogeyman don't exist. They believe that it is a boogeyman. Racism is a boogeyman from the older generation. This is how it used to be. And now we're going out and going on fishing trips with these crocodiles and wondering why we're not coming home, or we as parents, why are our kids not coming back? They're out there playing in the water with crocodiles. That has a history of doing these type of things, to attacking and dragging people in the water, or doing whatever crocodiles do, whatever wild animal that does what a wild animal do. And we are getting further and further away from the safety of building a village and a community. You know, we have to be able to build and destroy. When you're able, and with build and destroy, when I'm saying that, understand, you have to build what is positive and destroy what is negative within your village, within your community. We have to have the power and the willingness to build and destroy. You cannot create anything without excavation of that site of construction. You have to destroy whatever is there that's not going to benefit your building of whatever it is you're trying to build, whether you're trying to build a house or you're trying to build a community. You have to go there and excavate. You have to tear down and clear out anything that you want to build, anything that's in the way of you building something positive. So we have to be there building our own libraries, and we're relying on libraries that's in our community that don't have a lot of the books that many of us need. So we have to put those. It's fine to have a library, a public library. This is what I'm talking about. But what good is a public library if it's no more useful than the public schools? And if you're sending your kids to a public school or college or whatever, and the books that they have available for them to read isn't going to turn out the type of product from that school or whatever that we need in our community, then what good is it having your kids go to that school, or what good is it having them go to that library if the library don't have books that's going to help them to understand their history and appreciate their history, and also understand the history of their opposition in this country, and understand what they're going to deal with, understand what we have dealt with, and how those things are going to continue to be there, maybe in a different form or fashion. We have to be realistic on what we have. I mean, reading is fine, but if you're reading fiction, then what difference does it make? If you're not learning your history, if it's nothing teaching you to love one another, then what good is it? If you're falling in love with the past, what good is it? Ellen said, too often we forget the dangers that we have always been prevalent, that have always been prevalent in our world. Teaching our kids to stay woke doesn't make us racist, which I appreciate you saying that, because I'm going to get on that. She said it makes us aware. We're teaching our grands to pay attention to everyone. We want them to thrive and come back home no matter who they are around. I appreciate that comment. Now, one thing about the racist comment, because I saw something, and anyone who watches this knows how I feel about us, people saying black people being racist, or people of color being racist. I don't believe that anybody could be racist in America other than those who are in power. And the only people that are in power in this country are white people. Plain and simple. And I constantly see these posts of people saying black people being racist, and I look at the comments because I know the person that's posting it is trying to make a point, but people that's responding is like, yeah, sure, 100%. And people that don't look like us, of course, I've run into some racists. No, racism is white supremacy. Racism is what exists in America. Racism is controlling. You are supporting the system. A racist is a person that is part of a system or supporting a system of power. And no black people, you are a victim. If you're supporting what's happening, I don't care if you're a black person that's MAGA, you're not a racist because you are not benefiting from this system. You have been impaired by this system. You're a victim of this system into believing that this system is okay. So Yeah, the racist people saying that black people are being racist by teaching our kids to stay woke. Um, that's asinine to me. You're believing in racism if you're teaching your kids to be woke, to wake up to what's happening. You're teaching your kids that racism exists or still exists. That's what you're doing. You're not teaching your kids to be racist because they're not going to benefit off of this system. Um, and can black people be racist? Yeah, we can if we owned our own country and ran our own country and caused people to think a certain way and impaired their vision about their faith and told them that their God was black and, you know, if they're not a black person and you're imposing or imprinting your viewpoints on them, their education um, their economics, you know, you're controlling them that like that, then that'll be racism in your country. But we don't have that in this country. There is a group that does have that in this country. There's a group that makes us think that God or Jesus is a certain color and Moses was a certain color. Um, with their media and the books that they're putting out and all these things like this. Yeah, it is racism in this country, but that's not us. And us teaching our kids reality is telling them that racism exists, but we have to also teach them what racism is. But I do appreciate that comment. Um, but it is our responsibility to prepare our kids for any perils that may be, or any dangers at all that they will be facing, or how we have dealt with these dangers in the past, and they will have a newfound respect for our history. We have to teach them that our history is important. History is always important, a true history. But if we have a library and we think that libraries are important, we should have private libraries, you know, where kids could go and check out books. You know, to me, that's something that I know my friend, one of them I was talking about, he has a vast personal library. I have a nice sized personal library. But it's not so much the size, but it's the books that's in there. And it's a variety of books that's in there that to me that strengthens your library. But we should have this at the disposal of kids or our whole community, not just kids, but adults in our community. I think groups should get together and have their own library of books that's pertinent to us and our community. But it's something like when I was talking about a paradox. A paradox is a conflict, and I think we are in a paradox with our youth, and it's a paradox that's happening generation to generation in the black community. And what a paradox is, it's a conflict of conventional logic or perception, things that seems like it shouldn't be happening like this, but it is, or things that's happening. It's like why is that happening? Because it's not so much happening with I don't think it's happening with other cultures in America. I think many of these cultures are, um, their principles and their values are being passed along. And and I think their youth are maybe changing them, but building them, how can I put it? They're conforming them to new ways and new days and new technologies and things like this. But somehow in the black community, I don't believe that that's what's happening. I don't believe that. I believe that our new generations come up and they are shunning the ways of our older generations, even some of those core values. You know, some of the ways that men used to treat our women or protect our women, and some of the women that's raising boys and stuff. You're not teaching your sons to do this. You're not teaching your sons that, hey, you are the protectors, you're the providers. You know, you don't just go out and do this. And I think what some of the women are doing, the single parent women, they're teaching their boys to be safe. Because like Ellen said, we want them to come home. And I understand that. And and I think about the Carmelo Anthony situation. My thing is, you know, that wasn't a parenting issue. I know we don't want your kid to end up going to prison, but then this is society that we live in. I'm going to stand on my own too against anyone who's going against me to make me step off the sidewalk when I'm coming. You're not going to do that. You're not going to, now I'm not going to say you're going to provoke me to do something negatively, because I may step off the sidewalk on my own, if I see something happening. And it's okay to tell your sons to be aware of things that's happening in their surroundings, to say, do what the police tell you. But we also, on that same instant, we have to teach them that they have to be men in our communities and protect our communities. And I hope that makes sense. You want them to come home safely. You can't have people coming into your community and having the family, the women and children afraid in their own community, just like you don't do that in your house. No house that a man is in, that a teenage boy is in, shall have a situation where his mother or his sisters or his siblings are afraid and you're not doing anything about it. You should be the first line of defense. And I don't think a lot of our women, I've talked to some women, and it's one woman I talked to recently, she said basically the same thing, that a lot of these mamas are not teaching their sons how to be men. And you have to define what you mean by being a man. And that creed is what I'm talking about. There's a creed to being a man. And unfortunately, it seems to be a reality, because when I look around and I look at things happening, I look at some of these fathers that's having things happening to their sons. Most of the times, they're going to the courts. And the conversation that we basically had is it has to be an eye for an eye type situation, no matter, and we could both go blind. We could both end up, and I can't be worried about my life. And my son is in the ground because of some rogue cop or some rogue person, period. And that has to be maybe the same thing with no matter what happens, whoever does it. Mr. Child shooting somebody in the back. To me, we complaining about the court, and that goes all the way throughout history. You have to teach that this cannot happen, and it's not just about me. This is going to be, because it has happened to mine. And if someone would have done something down the line, maybe it wouldn't have happened to mine. But now I got to make sure that nothing, this type of thing, that if it happens to mine, it's not going to happen to yours down the road or generations down the road. We have to start setting the precedent. We have to be mama grizzlies. Mama grizzlies do not care about what's going to happen to them. They don't care if you have some type of shotgun and they charge you and you're saying, hey, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. I got to protect mine. And I know that they go overboard, because you could be like, hey, I'm running away, but you startle her and she with her cubs, you're going to pay the price. But if you do something against our cubs, that has to be one of the principles in the creed of our people. Stop allowing people to murder our kids. You shouldn't have to tell the people that. Nowhere in history you should not have to tell the people that. If a grizzly bear if a grizzly bear kills somebody's kid at a zoo, they're going to put that grizzly bear down. They can't have it, no matter what. They were talking about the incident with the bison. They were talking about where they going to put the bison down. The recent thing where he attacked the elderly man. They were talking, but he was doing what bison do. That's not, he didn't go out looking for people to harm. People were in his habitat. And if you continue to go in their habitat, that's what's going to happen. So I'm like my cousin, Kevin, I appreciate you showing up. He said, keep it real. But that's how we have to be, that our kids are off limit from harm. You cannot use the law, hide behind a badge to hurt our kids. You can hide behind it, but that's not enough concealment. That's not enough cover for you. And sometimes these fathers, and I'm talking, this is the fathers that need to be doing this. And I'm going off into something totally different, but I'm sorry, but this is the conversation basically I was having with somebody a couple of days ago, talking about the recent situations and things that has happened. We have to teach people. We have the ability to teach. as a community. We could teach you. We have the ability to teach our own how to be wary of those that don't look like us in our community, be wary of this government, be wary of every situation. This is how you conduct yourself with police. But I don't care. Sometimes those police don't care. They don't care if you're being friendly. They don't care about whatever it is you're trying to say. They don't care about where you live. They see you as you are. And a leopard can't change its spots. And we're not asking leopards to change their spots, even though some of us think they can. And they'll flip and they'll try to be friendly with the crocodiles and think that they could swim with the crocodiles or whatever. And you are who you are to the crocodiles. But we have to set that. We have to set that in motion. Our kids are not to be just discarded, damaged and discarded by anyone in this government, outside of this government. But also, with all that said, there's something called the Sorites paradox. And with the Sorites paradox, they call it a salt heap or a sand heap paradox. And I'm going to define what that is. But that can be used for any situation. What the Sorites paradox is when you have a sand of rice, a heap of rice or a heap of sand. At what point does it cease being a heap of sand or salt? You could take a grain away, and it's still going to be a heap of rice. A grain of salt, a grain of rice. When you look at it, but at one point it's not going to be. It's only going to be just a little, maybe 100 little pieces of rice. Or it's by your visual. And what that is talking about how we categorize things. And it's the vagueness of our categories. So what I'm getting at with the Sorites paradox is, at what time does something cease to be what we claim it is? At what time, at how many murders, at what time frame, I'm just going to say time frame, at what time frame did the olden days stop? That these people that say, well, that's how it used to be. And those people that say, well, racism doesn't exist. At what time did it stop existing? When we stopped fighting for our civil rights, when the Black Power movement was being infiltrated and they were being murdered by the system, infiltrated by agents and whatnot. At what point did actually racism stop happening in America? And if you could define what racism is, at what point did our school systems start? At what point were we equal? That these kids or this generation is thinking that that's the old days, that that's not what's happening now. Do they not? But what time do you think that this was, something that older people used to worry about? So my thing is with the Sorites paradox, how many murders or questionable circumstances, how long ago was that happening that we could say, okay, that's no longer what's happening right now? At what point? At what time frame? How many murders per year by black people or murders of black people can we say that we're safe and we're no longer in danger? How many times have cops pulled us over and we have not made it out of that situation, and it's a questionable circumstance that we could say that, okay, this type of thing doesn't happen anymore, that this is something that older people are worried about? And who are the older people? At what generation is that something from the past? How long are we going to say the olden days? How long ago was that? How long ago was the olden days? How long ago are the olden ways? Is that your parents' generation? What parent generation? What generation? At what point did that stop? That we didn't see the announcement. Okay, how many murders a year has to happen that we say, well, that's just below the threshold? What threshold? That's what I'm talking about. That's the paradox. We could say that things have stopped, but what has stopped? Show me what has stopped. That they like us more. Show me that. Okay, you can have a white friend. We've always been able to have a white friend. That's not the threshold. But we also had white enemies since we've been here. We still have white enemies. What government has stopped the racism, the bigotry, the murder, that we should trust anybody that doesn't look like us. I mean, we just saw the child incident with the guy in with South Carolina or something, and he shot the boy in the back over a bottle of water. When was that not, or what changed from that incident happening to Latasha Harling happening, where she got shot in the back of her head, by an Asian person over some orange juice that she was actually trying to pay for it at the money. This child incident happened. It's almost identical. It's a parallel. Over some water that the guy didn't even have on him. At what point is it different? I want to know. That's what my question is for those that think that things are different. When we have these questionable deaths at the hands of the police, at what point is Sandra Bland different, or Oscar Grant different, Tamir Rice different from Emmett Till? I understand Emmett Till was something in the past. But when we're finding bodies washing up, we finding people shot in the back of the head, we're finding people lynched, younger people. When did these lynching become different from the olden days and the olden ways lynching? Because they're labeling, oh, they did something to themselves. The police could say, yeah, well, we calling it a suicide. They're finding more black people being lynched, as if that's our main way of killing ourselves. Those that commit suicide, yeah, I think I'm going to go out in the woods and get a rope and tie it to a tree and tie it around my neck. At what point? It was at the olden days that separate the new days and the new. When have the ways changed? Because Emmett Till, they said that he probably ran away from home, that the mom was probably lying. She probably just, got rid of her son, or, abandoned her son and trying to get publicity. That was what was happening at that time that we're not going to hear about. And then when they fished his body out of the creek, weighted down, beat severely, tortured. But the news before they found his body was that it was just a make-believe story. She's probably lying. She's probably making it up. Nobody did it. He probably, whatever they were saying. This is in the news. So I'm saying, at what time did those things change between Emmett Till, Tamir Rice, between Noden Wells? At what time has things changed that we could say, well, we could let our guard down? We could send our kids out with his friends. And the difference in those that say, well, you got to be careful when you send them in the black community. Yeah, but in the black community, they're not killing them on the foundation of racism. They're killing them because we got a problem in our community, inside of our community. Our kids being killed outside of our community that think they're safe for no reason, for not doing anything but to hang with their friends. That's a different type of story. Our kids being killed by police officers is not the same as our kids being killed over a gang shootout somewhere else. The product is the same. The result is the same. But I should not be worried about my kids being killed in school by the school teacher. I should not be worried about my kids being killed by those who are put there on taxpayers' money to protect them. We have to be the ones to change the creedless breed of people that we are producing in our communities that think that they can let their guard down. There is a new breed. There's a new breed of people that don't believe that things are what they are and are what they have been. And a new breed of us that believe that America is a new breed when America is actually who she has always been. And I appreciate everyone showing up. I appreciate all the comments. And Ellen said nobody's hanging themselves. And we know that. And we got to convince our kids to understand and know what they're facing. I appreciate everyone showed up. Hopefully I'll have a better show for y'all next week. Peace. Kevin Lewis on The Blueprint.